For most of human history, losing someone meant losing them forever. In the middle of the 19th century, grieving families had no real expectation of ever speaking to a deceased loved one again. The curtain closed, and that was it. Then a new religious movement swept the globe, offering something seemingly impossible. It was called Spiritualism, promising a direct, literal telephone line to the afterlife. By the 1890s, an estimated 8 million people across the United States and Europe were attending these seances. They crowded around wooden tables in darkened parlors, paying to watch objects levitate and listen to messages from beyond the grave. The movement attracted some of the most prominent minds of the era. Devout followers included powerful political figures like Mary Todd Lincoln, and it also drew in highly analytical thinkers like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Grieving families were convinced because psychic mediums provided what looked like tangible evidence. They produced pages of automatic writing dictated by spirits and developed spirit photography showing literal, ethereal figures sitting right next to their living relatives. People were desperate for comfort. Spiritualism grew from a local curiosity into a highly organized religion, expanding from private parlors into a massive network of public churches and international organizations. But the strangest detail about this massive religious infrastructure is its origin. The entire concept of modern spirit communication was completely invented by two bored teenagers. Meet 14-year-old Maggie and 11-year-old Kate Fox. In the winter of 1848, they were living in a freezing cabin in upstate New York, looking for a way to pass the time. We know for an absolute fact that their ghost story was a hoax, because decades later, the creators publicly confessed to the entire thing. Yet millions of people actively chose to ignore the truth. It started in March of 1848 in the tiny hamlet of Hydesville. The girl's mother was deeply superstitious, and the sisters realized they could terrify her by producing heavy, mysterious knocking sounds echoing through the walls and floorboards. Their initial method was incredibly simple. They tied a red apple to a string and secretly dropped it against the rough wood to mimic the heavy thud of invisible footsteps. To take the prank further, they established a line of communication. Kate snapped her fingers and asked the invisible entity to knock back the exact same number of times, tricking their mother into believing an intelligent presence was in the room. They even gave the entity a backstory. Through a series of questioning knocks, the ghost identified himself as Charles B. Rosna, a murdered peddler they nicknamed Mr. Splitfoot, who claimed his body was buried directly under their basement. Their panicked mother brought in the neighbors. The neighbors started asking the invisible knocker questions about their own deceased relatives, and the girls knocked out perfectly accurate answers. Overnight, the locals declared the sisters genuine psychic mediums. The neighbors carried the story out of the cabin and into the surrounding towns. This attempt to scare a single parent was now a public sensation, spreading across the state as a verified supernatural event. The story quickly reached their much older sister, Leah Fox. Recognizing a massive financial opportunity, Leah moved the girls to the city and started charging admission for people to witness the newly dubbed Rochester Rappings. As they began performing for wealthy elites and huge crowds in well-lit parlors, they obviously couldn't hide an apple on a string. They needed a way to fake the supernatural sounds right in front of paying customers. They relied on a bizarre biological talent. The sisters discovered they could manipulate their foot muscles to violently crack their toe and ankle joints. Standing on hollow floorboards inside heavy boots acted as an acoustic amplifier. The tiny pops resonated outward, sounding exactly like ghostly thuds inside the architecture. To provide those perfectly accurate answers, the girls utilized cold reading. They would slowly knock their way through the alphabet while carefully watching their clients' faces and breathing. The moment a customer subconsciously reacted to the correct letter, the girls stopped. The entire supernatural experience was a combination of physical anatomy, acoustic tricks, and a deep understanding of human psychology. The deception continued for 40 years, but by 1888, the immense guilt of lying to grieving families became too heavy for Maggie Fox to bear. She sat down for a massive interview with the New York World newspaper. In print, for everyone to read, she exposed the entire global scam and admitted they had made it all up. To provide ultimate proof, Maggie rented out the New York Academy of Music. She stood on the stage in front of thousands of people in her stocking feet and publicly demonstrated the exact toe-cracking technique they had used to trick the world. The creator had destroyed her own myth in plain sight. In that moment, the physical evidence was undeniable, and the original source of the knocking had been revealed to the public. But the millions of practicing spiritualists completely rejected the confession. The believers constructed their own rationalizations. They argued that angry spirits were forcing Maggie to lie, or that her real psychic abilities had simply faded and she was desperate for media attention. Having lost control of their own creation and been rejected by the very movement they started, Maggie and Kate struggled deeply. Both sisters ultimately died in absolute poverty, battling severe alcoholism. Their legacy reveals a devastating truth about human vulnerability. When faced with the absolute finality of death, empirical evidence simply doesn't matter. The desperate need for hope will always overpower the facts.